and welcome to Fat Squirrel Speaks. Today is Monday, November 14th. I'm Amy Beth, also known as the Fat Squirrel on Ravelry and the Fat SQRRL on Instagram. Welcome to the dining room table. We have a slightly different camera setup if you're returning. Things look a little different. We might be working out some kinks, so I apologize in advance if things are a bit wonky. Trust that I will try to work on it for next time. I may be looking down a little bit because I have to have a monitor for this setup versus like a flip out monitor. So just in case you're wondering why I'm just like looking down below you, there's nothing on your shirt. You're fine. You're looking beautiful. You're looking amazing. But it's the monitor. It's not anything on your shirt. You're doing great. So, oh my goodness, y'all. Winter has surprised us. I woke up, we've had 70-degree weather for weeks in central Indiana. We had a little bit of a cold snap in the beginning of October, which was perfect. It really set the foliage to going. But then we just had this weirdly warm weather, which was fine. It was lovely. It was fine. But we kind of were just looking around like, when is the shoe gonna fall? And so then I woke up Saturday morning, had no idea that we were supposed to have snow, looked out the window and just started giggling because it was so ridiculous. Because usually our first snow is just like, bloop, 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 done. This was like an actual snowfall with actual accumulation, and I had no idea that it was going to happen. Usually I am anticipating all of the winter weatherness, but no, I dropped the ball. So it was a lovely surprise. It was actually really enjoyable to be surprised in that way. But that said, the weather is with us. Time to break out the sweater weather. This is my granny stripe cardigan. It's very, very loosely based on the granny stripe cardigan. I have deep reservations about recommending that pattern. So basically I just kind of wang it. But I really love it. It's just with a bunch of different fingering weight yarns, hand spun, commercial, all sorts of different. And I find it to be very wearable, especially in the house. It feels very sturdy. It definitely gets pills. There's definitely some, well, that was just my hair. But there's definitely ends that work their way out. Then they just get tucked back in. Maybe not, just depending. Quite frankly, they don't until I'm recording and I see them and I'm like, oh. You're going to see some activity behind me. Hopefully you don't hear barking. But Gus there's a squirrel friend that is tormenting him currently. Oh my goodness, so let's get into it. I have lots of stuff to show and share and chat and flabobble. Get some tea. There is some maple walnut biscotti left. You definitely are going to need to dunk it though. It's at the dunking stage for sure. But get some tea and let's cozy in. First off, let's do administrativeness. First off, let's do patron prizes. I'm going to do them a little bit differently this quarter. I'm actually going to tell you about them right now, but then I'm going to post in the Patreon feed. So you usually get email notifications about that. But I'm going to post the picture of the item, and then if you're interested in winning that prize, you can just chime in. And it doesn't have to be anything, you don't have to write anything astute. Just be like, wee, I like it, wee. So that way I get a lot of weird brain stress about prizes and not everybody wanting the prize that they win. And I don't know, it just gives me a lot of silly brain pain. So this is maybe a way to take care of it. So anyway, so prizes for this time. I'm experimenting with a couple new bag designs. How cute is this? So she's not going to make it because she's a little too narrow in the neck. So she is a different kind of bag. She's not necessarily a project bag. She could be a little crochet bag maybe, but if you've got needles and stuff, she's a little too gnarly in the neck. But isn't she cute? With the contrasting railroad stripe denim. I couldn't resist. So sweet. So that's one prize. And then another prize will be, I ordered a Cozy Stitch kit for myself and one for you. Cozy Blue Stitch kit. And I also made you a little needle keeper. A little needle book. So it's a little quilted, like, for your needles. Because if you're anything like me, even though I sew for a living, I can never find a hand sewing needle when I need it. So you can put a little clip on there. So you could like clip it on to like your area where you keep your accessories or your bag, or you could just not use it at all. But then this super cute little, right? Cozy Blue does the cutest kits. Your box may come flattened because like it would just make sense to ship in an envelope, but how cute. So there's that. And then the last prize is also like a sneak of a finished object. So last time I showed you my S. John shawl. That's ES. It's actually striped S. John, ESJAN by Stephen West, and it is another prize. So if you would like to win a fun, silly shawl prize from me, check out your Patreon feed. Or if you'd like to become a patron of the podcast, you can do that at patreon.com. / the Fat Squirrel. It's in the YouTube drop down. But the yarn is a superwash merino nylon from Spun Right Round. That's the blue variegated, and then the green is her proprietary mix, or her proprietary yarn, and the blue is webs. So it's Southampton yarns, mohair silk. But didn't it turn out so cute? And like, forgive me for wearing your shawl. But it looks so cute on, right? Oh, so festive. It's so sweet. And other than the, again, mohair part, it was very enjoyable to knit. I just apparently don't like to knit mohair by itself. I like to hold it with another yarn. Not a fan by itself. So if you're interested in winning any of those prizes, go over to patreon.com. Again, you'll get a notification when I put it up. Then, other administrative things. There's a shop update tomorrow. I know. I actually recorded this episode on Friday, and it went horribly awry. There were like some serious technical difficulties, which I'm hoping we've gotten past. We'll see. But there is an update on November 15th at 9 p.m. Eastern, and I have bags to show you. Right? So cute. So sock size, we have these precious, this is a lightweight twill. We have these super cutie kitties with Christmas lights and scarves and woolly toboggans and antlers and all of the good things. And this one has an unbleached cotton interior. And then I have some quilters cotton ones. Where did she go? Oh, she's right there. Sorry. I have this lovely gal. Now, I'm not sure. We'll see how good camera color correction is. But this is a very, very soft, slightly warm blush pink, I would say. And it has some metallic accents. I don't know if you can tell, like, for example, like the little pine bough is metallic. And then the lining on this one is like fun sock stockings. How cute. And then, also in the sock size from the same line, is this precious. I mean, come on. I totally bought this color, obviously. It's gorgeous. And then how fun to have the Christmas mail. So sending your winter packages, sending your winter cards, sending your Yule blessings, all fun stuff. And again, this color is just like, oh, but then also, this one is not metallic, but also this one has some metallic highlights on the entrance, the inside, because again, it has that cute sock print in like a red, green, gold, versus the other kind of like softer pinky minty colorway. And then I have that same mail fabric in red, which I wish I had bought more of because it's super cute. And then same, though that one is just an unbleached cotton lining. So it's only the two sock bags who have the contrasting lining. And then I also have the same print again with this gold highlight, metallic highlight, excuse me. Actually what I'm going to do for the rest of them is do a green bag or a green bottom, because I just decided that I liked it a bit more and it'll be a little bit more robust. So this one is a little bit shallow. It'll probably be more like up to here. And it'll have this cute, like with the figgy puddings and the like kind of Christmas treats. I know, right? But clearly the entire reason is this coffee pot. Like whatever. Did you see Phoebe Wall? Did you see Phoebe Wall's red enamel coffee pot? It's ridiculously gorgeous. I'm not sure if it's still up for pre-order or if it's going to be available in the shop like after the pre-orders. It's this like red enamel coffee pot that I literally do not need, but want horribly bad. I'm like, but maybe I need it for a flower vase. Also, I need to settle down, but it's so gorgeous. I already got my calendar for next year. Oh, that coffee pot's just shaking its little self at me. I can I can see it just perfectly in my mind's eye. It is really gorgeous. But anyway, you have the spiritual version of the coffee pot, right? So cute. And so the rest of the prints are all cotton denims. So the first one is your cozy Yuletide drinks by the fire. And then a little fun like ditzy toss of your roasted chestnuts and your gingerbread houses and your warm woolen mittens. And then, oh, I'm telling you, put navy blue and a house on a thing and I'm going to buy it, apparently. That's the trick if you're looking to market things to me, apparently. But like, how sweet are these little houses and this like little swoopy roof? Like, don't you want to live in that swoopy roof house? Or maybe you want to live in this house and then we could be neighbors. So that would be lovely also. But this one is definitely like, again, just checking on color stuff. I would say that this is, wow. This is definitely more pink than red. And little swooshy roof house is a sweet kind of warm carnation pink almost. And one of the houses is green, like this little guy is like a forest green or that's slightly brighter than a forest green. But it was so sweet. Woo! And then, okay, so I'll just, this one I also will have in the Aran sweater print. This is actually just like kind of like what I could squeeze out of the remnants of that. So there's only two of this one, but oh, you know, cute are these little frogs and cats. But oh my gosh, so sweet. And then sweater size. So large wedge is great for 2 to 3 skein projects. A shawl, a hat, and a sock. You know, like if you've got a couple things going. A cowl, obviously. But then sweater moves into like that. Oh my gosh, are you gonna hybrid knit along? So sweater size moves into like your 5 skein-ish. Maybe like a sweater in progress if you're somebody my size, or if you're a smaller, or like even a fingering weight sweater for me. Or if you're a smaller human, it might hold a regular sweater size for you. Or, you know, your hybrid knit along, your 5 skein Stephen West December 26th cast on. Are you gonna do it? I think if you went, we should definitely, in the Discord group, we should definitely hybrid knit along together. I think that sounds smashing. So we have these sweet, snuggly bear cat things. I don't know, but they're cute, dude. And some sweaters and some warm drinks. Getting ready for that cozy, cozy time. And we have some Christmassy baubles. So this is all such a good, I mean, I'm not usually a huge pink person, but oh, this color is really getting me this year. This kind of like, it's not salmon, but it is adjacent, I guess, for But it's just such, and I love this green, like the like skinny. What are those, like the Nordic fur? Whatever. I love the like short, skinny tree branches. They're so lovely. And again, some more warm pinks, and your package is tied up with string. Right. So this is like a dove gray background that has like a visual linen texture. Again, it is on that denim, but it kind of has that linen look to it. And then in a more traditional palette, right? This is not a puzzle that you're going to work this year. Totally. I'm not going to lie, dude. Is it Charles Wasaki? Is that, I have no idea if that's even the right thing I pulled out of my brain. And I certainly don't know that's how you say it. But like, he is a person who just like has painted a gabillion paintings, and they've all been turned into puzzles, and they all just have like steeply pitched roofs and like houses on hillsides. That's really not all they are, but I mean, it's pretty close. But I don't care. I'll still buy all those puzzles. I won't buy all of them, but I will be tempted. Anyway, that has kind of this feel to me. It's not at all exactly, but it's just reminiscent. And then we get into the big dudes, the Aran sweater size. So this will hold an Aran weight sweater for me. It'll hold a blanket project. It'll hold a small child. It'll definitely hold a cat and a dog if they're my dog and your cat probably. But maybe not. That's probably not a good idea. But it could happen. And they are denim. They're sturdy. But that's probably not a good idea. But anyway, so we have this fun. I love this black. Right. I'm loving black this year a lot too. So it has this great poinsettia and the warm cups and a little bit of a, is this a gift or a chocolate? Whoops, I don't know, but I want it either way. And like some kind of winter berries and this cute bird. Oh, so charming. And then the last one is the Aran sweater size of the froggy kitty cat print that I showed you earlier. Because come on. This is so weird, but I had to have it. And oftentimes it's the one where I'm like, that's too weird. That those ones you guys like the most. So hopefully that'll be the case this time. But like, how cute is it? And this one, your layout will be very similar to this. So, because it kind of worked out that the print just had that certain repeat. But like, you've got like a cute little pudding. You've got, oh, I was dying. The cute trees. He loves his candy cane. So again, those are all going to be at fatsquirrelfibers.com on November 15th. And they will probably go out like that next day because I have jury duty. 17th. I know, right? So yeah, lots of fun stuff coming your way. If you ordered a crazy Tudor bird bag, I am currently sewing on those. They are planning to go out on schedule. But yeah, that's kind of like all the administrative stuff for us today. So, okay, so then we'll talk about knitting, I think, first. I have knitting, and I have stitching, and I have shenanigans, and I have shenanigans of the mind. So the knitting is right here. So I guess we'll just talk about that first. So I showed you my striped S-John. If you are curious to see if you skipped ahead through the patron prizes and you're curious to see what it looks like, you can just bump back a few minutes. It's the same. I just kind of blocked it out. All I did to block it was just, of course, wash it in warm water. And then I have like a gull wing dryer, clothes dryer, which is just like a fold out clothes dryer that you can use inside. And I just pin it around like the top of that. And then I put clothespins on each little nubble. I don't know what, each little scallop. I was like, shallot? And that's exactly how I blocked it. Easy peasy. And it gives you, your garter doesn't get super flattened out, which I really like. You can still kind of see that there's eyelet rows, right? Like you can see those every once in a while. And again, the mohair still looks very open and lacy. So rather than trying to pin everything out, that's what I did. And again, that's the Striped Esjan, Esjan, by Stephen West. I have my Voe, Voe vest by MJ Mucklestone. I am almost to the point of starting armhole steeks. Doesn't that look great? I'm very pleased with how it's looking. Not my typical color palette. Like, I don't ever knit red for myself, like a true red. But it's enjoyable. And I am using the called for yarns. It's Jamieson's of Shetland, right? Just Jamieson's. Jamieson's double knitting. Boop, boop, boop. In the called for colors, except the brown. So the main color of the body is, I am using the Fiber Company Lore. I think that's the DK one, right? There's also like Camp, but I think this one is Lore. And a brown that I had bought for another project. So it just seems to make sense to use that one. It's also a DK. It is a little bit more, it's a little bit beefier than the Jamieson's, but I think it's still giving me a gauge that I like. It doesn't seem like it looks like it's popping out a lot more or anything like that in the color work. So I am pleased with how that is working out. Yay. I think per the pattern I should have already split for the arms, but it just wasn't quite long enough. I don't want it to be I think in the pictures it is right, it hits like right at the natural waist, which would be good. Originally when I cast it on, I thought I wanted it to be more cropped because I thought, oh, it'd be so cute to wear, you know, like with really high waisted pants or a dress or whatever. But I think I'm actually gonna make it more of the length that it is in the photos, because it occurred to me that if I make it that cropped, I'm not going to work any additional bust shaping into it. So I'm not going to work any short rows to give it more length or any additional stitches to give it more width. So what can happen in a cropped one especially is that it'll be, because it requires more fabric to go over my bust. Like what can happen is that it'll just be really short in the front and longer in the back, which is a super cute look. But I don't want it to be like shorter than cropped in the front. Does that make sense? Like I don't want it for me to plan to make it like a cropped length and then in the front it's like almost to my bra line. Like I don't want it to have like a real big swoop on the hemline. I think that's super cute in a lot of situations, but it's not what I'm looking for here. Again, especially with this like very strong horizontal ferrule patterning, it'll like really exaggerate that hem. And then I'm concerned I might do something weird to just like the whole look of the thing. So yeah, so I'm not working any additional shaping for the bust, which is really like I usually always work additional shaping, but I just kind of liked the look of it being more straighter. And also like it's a pain to kind of, it's not that bad to add stitches and ferrule. It's not that big of a deal, but I just maybe didn't want to do that with my brain at the moment. But I will put more stitches in the front. So I worked the size for my bust line, but I will put more of the fabric in the front of the garment than in the back. And that's just because like I have my under bust or upper bust, they're basically the same measurement for me, to full bust is a slightly bigger difference than sweater patterns are usually drafted for. So a great way to get around doing shaping, if you don't want a curvy silhouette to your finished object, if you want it to fit you but still have a straighter silhouette, is to put more of your stitches in the front. So basically I'm kind of working like a 26 in the front and a 22 in the back. Like a US 26, a women's size 26 in the front, but a US 22 in the back. And that's because my under bust or my upper bust is basically a US 22 and my full bust is basically a US 26. I mean, again, basically. I'm using that specific number because I just sewed It doesn't, I just sewed. I don't know why that word sounds wrong. So in past tense just seems strange. I just made a top for myself, a woven top, and that's how I got around not doing any sort of bust finagling with it. Was I just made a smaller back size and a bigger front size. Because again, the top I made, it didn't have like a super form-fitting silhouette. So I just didn't want there not to be enough fabric in the front, because what tends to happen is that like it rides up, or again, you have just like all of this extra fabric like in the back, but then it's really much stretched over your bust line a lot more. So anyway, so that's what I'll tell you about that shirt maybe next time. I just couldn't get it all together, quite frankly. I just need to wash it before I show it to you. And I did make time to do that. So then the next thing I'm going to show you is, so I showed you in the Patreon how I was working on some different bag sizes. So this is that bag just made super, like a little bit wide, well, made wider. And like, I don't know, the more I look at it, I'm like, yes, it's fine for a bag. It's super cute. So I'm product testing. I'm just working out to see whether or not that it'll work. But it is really a fun little, right? It's a fun little size. But anyway, maybe just with one handle at the sides. That might work. But anyway, that's an aside. What I'm going to show you is I am knitting with some hand spun that has been lying in stash forever. Not because I didn't like it, but because I liked it too much. This is some hand spun from Hello Yarn. No, this is hand spun from Spun Right Round. She doesn't do it. I don't know that she's doing fiber very often. I feel like she did just do some not too long ago, and it is like a bulky weight, just a 2-ply, very Barber pulley, just highly enjoyable. I mean, let's just enjoy it. And I am knitting the Cherry Garcia pattern, which I believe is by Hello Yarn, if I'm not mistaken, which is why her name was on my lips. And originally what that pattern is it's literally called a neck warmer, I want to say. Like, it doesn't, I just think she specifically calls it a neck warmer and not a cowl. And it is it's close fitting, almost like a turtleneck would be, like a dickie or something. So I cast on my yarn for that, knowing that that's what it was. But then I got like halfway through the skein and decided that that was just not actually what I wanted. I tried it on and it just felt too restrictive to me. I do in fact like a cowl. Like, I like it to sit up and I like it to kind of like sit here, not like here. So all I did was, of course, rip it out, and I was afraid I might not have enough yarn to make it long enough. So clearly this extra inch is going to make all the difference, right? Brains are weird, dude. But anyway, I had some Knit Picks Aloft, which is one of their tube yarns. So it's a nylon tube that I believe wool and alpaca in this case are blown into. It's super light, super warm. It's super fluffy and soft. Like, it's pretty dreamy. I'm not gonna lie. I have not made a garment with one of these yarns yet, but they are very tempting because they are just delicious. They weigh nothing. Get great yardage because they weigh so little. And again, they're just super soft and fluffy, and it'd be super cute for baby knits, but I think these are all hand wash. But anyway, so in my brain, giving myself this extra inch down here and then up here is going to make all the difference in making this a feasible length with just one skein. Whatever. But I think I'm pleased with it. So of course it'll block out a bit wider. But I do like a cowl that is stiff enough to stand up when it's a shorter one like this, like not a infinity, and I think it's going to do great. So I think this is for a friend, and she's a friend that I just can't seem to knit anything for. Like no matter how hard I try, when I knit her stuff, it's just like, sorry, this is the crappiest thing I've ever made. Like, I don't know. Maybe, you know what? I should just reframe it and be like, she's just such a good friend and I love her so much that I can't make anything that represents that, is what I should actually just have in my head. Of just like, not that the thing I made is bad, but just like, I could not make anything that would really show you how much I care about you. But here's a feeble attempt, is probably what I should try to reframe it as. Because it's true. It's just like every time I knit her something, I'm like, I'm very displeased with how it turns out. But maybe that's why. Just because I like want to give her like the moon, and I just am like, here's a paper cutout of the moon, sorry. And now, of course, so when I first cast it on, I wasn't using a contrasting yarn. And then when I picked this up, I was like, oh, it needs to be brioche. Because I haven't knit brioche in a long time, and I love brioche. But I didn't like this in the brioche. It was a little bit too fuzzy. It really diluted the funness of the hand spun, I think. So, but it is so soft that I was like, maybe I should make a lining with it. Again, then I over-engineer this gift for this woman, and it doesn't work out. And I'm not even like trying to impress her. She's been my friend since we were like 13. Oh my gosh. We've known each other for like 30 years. Like, there is no point in trying to impress. She knows better. But this has been really fun to knit, and I've really enjoyed it, and it's inspired me to get some more hand spun on the needles. Even, like, I just need to just make the stuff with it, and of course I can just give it away, because it's fun. And then, other than some sock knitting, which I have been doing, and I will show you, like, when I get, like, a pair done, that's kind of been all of my knitting. So, next we'll talk about sewing. Okay, so in sewing, I have a few things to show you. Let's see. I'll just get this one out of the way first because it's ginormous. I have been working on a quilt top for my husband. I will put the name in the little booble-a-doo because I forgot to bring the pattern over. But basically, it's a Jacob's ladder. And the reason I bought the pattern is because I wanted the layout of like what it just happened to be that they made the pattern in the fabric that I wanted to use for it. And I was like, oh, well, I just want the layout so I don't even have to think about it. Delish. But basically it is just a Jacob's ladder. And it's made with Woolies flannel. And I made myself a quilt with it, and a lap quilt, and I really like it. So I decided to make my husband. This is actually like a twin size. It's not just a lap quilt, but he is like hecka tall. He's 6'4", and he's always freezing. Oh my gosh. He found like this tiny electric heater. And he's been using it even when it was like 70 degrees outside. His thyroid's been checked. He's fine. He just does not have enough energy to like make a warm body. It's really a problem. So anyway, so yay! It's not, I need to do the sandwich, the quilt sandwich. I just got the batting. I'm going to do wool batting because I love wool batting. But I'm going to do the sandwich and then either quilt it here at home, or my mom is a fancy long arm quilter now. So maybe I'll take it at Thanksgiving and I was like, never mind. Maybe I'll take it at Thanksgiving and try to work on it then. We'll see. I don't know, we'll see. But that is exciting to get that done because I bought that fabric last year and then it just kind of like sat in its little bin. So I was excited to make it. Okay. And so also I'll show you this first because this is what made this other thing happen. So I think last time I showed you my little stitcheries I was working on. Oh, no, that's okay. That's just straight thread. So these are the autumn, well, this is one of the autumn salt boxes, which is a pattern by Plum Street Samplers. They have the other seasons as well. I also liked this, I think the summer one, strangely enough. But, there's stitched, the way the pattern is written is that there's like this like instant, like a Polaroid frame around them. I did not stitch that part. Not really sure why that was the choice, but whatever. I'm not a designer. So they're stitched with this white border around them, but I didn't. I just omitted that and left it with just, oh my gosh. It's so cute. So I had this little mini charm pack. I say I had it. I bought this little mini charm pack, which was, I think, Adamstown. I want to say Adamstown was the fabric line. It's by Joe Morton. And I just made little half square triangles and then made little hourglass blocks from those. So that means I have 2 of each of these blocks. So I'm also I'm also stitching. Gus, you're just a jerk today. I'm also stitching the other one on this pattern. So that's how far I am so far. I'm stitching mine on 32 count fabric, and it's 1 strand over 2. So yeah, but I'm just gonna hold this up more because it's super cute, right? I do have regrets. I bought a little bit of this color, which was part of the line for the backing and binding. I wish I had bought black. I think it really would have been cuter with a little, like this super skinny little black background. Or excuse me, black binding. But, you know, sometimes you make mistakes. But I do still think it's super cute. So yeah, I just left like a little 1/4 inch border around it. I sewed 3 of my little hourglass blocks together, put them right sides together, and then I just drew a line on my stitchery on the linen cloth. I just drew a line on it, like a 1/4 inch around the design on each side. And I just put them right sides together, sewed it down, did the same thing over here. And then the top has 5 blocks. I did the same thing, just sewed it. And yeah, I mean, they're definitely not perfect. The seam allowances are very chunky. I probably should have done 1/8 inch seam allowances instead of quarters, but it's the first time I've ever done blocks that tiny. And otherwise, I think it looks super cute. I'm just gonna keep holding it up because I really like how it looks. And then I was stitching on that binding and I was like, oh, I love hand stitching. I really, really love stitching on bindings. Like if we were neighbors and you didn't like to stitch on your bindings, I would 100% volunteer to stitch on your bindings. So enjoyable. But I was stitching that on and I was like, I need another hand stitching thing. Because I mean, I'm not going to get a quilt done in time to get a binding on it. So I decided to make a little English paper piecing project. I have like a little lumbar pillow on my chair that I needed a covering for. And I had this package, again, another mini charm pack that I decided I would do these little hexies with. So these are just little 1-inch hexagons. I've tried to do a paper piecing project before, but I did not finish it. So we'll see if I get this one finished. So I'm just gonna like put them together in the strips, and then it's in this cookie tray, or in this 9x13 sheet pan. Because it's so small, I had to do the layout very specifically so that the fabrics would not all like overlap and be the same print each time. So hopefully this will sort of keep me in line. Actually, I think what I'll do is just maybe do the rest of them in these strips, because originally I wasn't going to do them in strips. I was just going to do them like higgledy-piggledy as I went across. But I think maybe for organization's sake, I should do them in strips. And then that would be easy too. Like then I could actually sit and watch television or something and stitch the strips together. So that's going to just be a little English paper piecing project. I really wanted to do 6-pointed stars, but I couldn't do them with this little bit of fabric that I had. So it's a good idea that I did something smaller as my first project. We'll see. I did just glue-based. I glue-based using that little glue stick that the people use. I don't know. I am using Aurifil 50 weight. I started with this, I don't know who makes this, but I bought this at the fabric store because it's for English paper piecing, and I think it's like 80 weight, or maybe it's even 100 weight. It's like gossamer. It's so thin. but then I was afraid of it because it's so thin. It was actually totally easy to use. I don't know why. I just kind of got freaked out by how skinny it was. So I went to the Aurifil 50 weight. You really I can't see a difference for myself between the two. I guess you can see a tiny bit more, mostly because you can kind of like see the needle holes more, which is like the hole where the thread is, I guess. But I mean, it's not anything I can see from this far away to know the difference. But so yeah, I'm working on that. We'll see how it goes. I'm gonna stop now because Gus is begging to be let outside to chase a squirrel. So I'll be right back and we'll talk about shenanigans. Okay, so shenanigans. About a little over a week ago, I went to the Merry Meeting Show, which is a show in New Harmony, Indiana, and I'll talk about the show, like the art show itself, and then I'll talk about New Harmony a little bit. But I went to this show because this spring, on a whim, I went to like a craft show at our state fairgrounds, which was really nice. It was lovely, and it's unexpectedly great. And there was this redware potter there, and redware is not something I've not particularly been interested in it before, but I don't know, something about it just hit me. He had this stupid plate. It's like big, beautiful plate with this leaping hair on it. And I just was like, I was so drawn to it. And then I was like super conflicted because it's clearly decorative. Like it is not a plate that necessarily is to be used. Although now maybe I could use it to put my English paper piecing layouts on. Anyway. The story of my life is finding excuses to buy things. Anyway, I was just really taken with his work, but most of what he had at that point in the show was just purely decorative. And I have this weird, I mean, there's like nothing wrong with that at all. That's lovely and wonderful. But I have this weird thing about like, I want ceramics to be useful. It's just a silly me thing. Like, it just feels like I want to use them. And it's not even like they need to be useful, I guess. It's more like I want to use them. That's actually a better way to approach it, because I do. I just want to use them. Like I want to be able to enjoy them in daily use or weekly use or by whatever. I just really enjoy using them. And so redware as just a purely decorative item is not as interesting to me. And again, that's purely just a me thing. It's not. And also, like, I just have a lot of places to put things in my house. And I have a tiny dog that loves to jump on stuff. So it's compounded. But anyway, I was just really taken by his redware. He only does that show in the spring. And then he does this Merry Meeting show in November. And then he has like an open house because he is an Indiana potter. He has an open house, I think, in December. And so I just have been looking forward to it all year, and I was not at all disappointed. It was a lovely show. It was in the Granary in New Harmony, and also another building which is like an old, was previously used as like a dormitory. So it's in a gorgeous setting in a lovely town, and there was beautiful stuff. It was really great. I would say that you would maybe call it like early American folk arts. Is maybe how I would best describe it. Like there was a good variety. It was not like all I don't think any of it was reproduction, but it wasn't all strictly inspired by early American folk arts. Like there were some people who did like Santas and stuff that were just like that just had like a more folk art feel to them. So there was a good variety. There was a woman who did like the wool strip rugs, which were gorgeous. There was like a shaker box person. There was a person who did beautiful bird and duck, like decorative, like not decoys, but in that vein. There were like a woman who did penny rugs and like other kind of wool applique. There was a quilter. There was like a really, there was a person who did like the Frockter, like the German, sort of like illuminated manuscript kind of like stylized, which I really enjoyed. I definitely don't have a cross-stitch Frockter bird pattern in the queue. I do. definitely don't have like 30 stitcheries that I want to do, and I'm the slowest stitcher ever. Yeah, whatever. Okay, so there was a person who did fracture. There was a person who did like not needle felting because that's with wool, but she did some sort of like cotton sculpture, and they were really fun. I don't know. I guess she just like I didn't ask her the makings of it because she seemed a little bit reserved. But they were really fun, and they looked like, anyway, they would be great for like little feather trees or just really gorgeous things. So it's just like really nice variety, and it was a perfect size show because it was in 2 different locations, so you could like look through one, and then I know this sounds silly, but it's also helpful because it's on multiple levels in each location. So for me, it helped me to remember where things were that I wasn't interested in. There was this woman, oh no, there was this woman who did this like found wood sculpture, but also with animals inspired by like this 18th century, I don't know, was it Dutch, was it German, like fantastical animals book. I don't even, anthropomorphized animal, I don't even know, but it was gorgeous. Oh, she was like, she had this turtle, and so the head of the turtle was like a found piece of wood where like the knot was the turtle's mouth, so he just like, it looked like he was like, and but all of their clothing was like woolen and just like kind of beautifully shabby, and they had like fantastic little accessories. Her stuff was gorgeous. Oh, I did. Let's see, what would she have been? She was in the granary. She was on the 2nd floor. Maria Paula was the spun cotton person. Oh, what would she be? Folk art? Maybe a Andrea Durnell folk art? Maybe that's who she was. I imagine that's what it is. They were just amazing sculptures. And so she finds the wood as she's like taking dogs for walks and stuff like that. But it was very enjoyable. But anyway, so it's a perfect size on multiple floors so that I could like look. I didn't get so overwhelmed. I'm very prone to being overstimulated. I was able to look at everything, and then we like took a little walk around the town and went to like the visitor center of New Harmony and looked at a few things, and then had lunch, and then went back, and like I could make my decision of like what I wanted to purchase as I was like thinking. And I did want to buy a piping plover, but it was gone, so I had to reboot. But here's what I did buy. So Bee Tree Pottery is the potter that originally I went there to see, and it was a very hard decision. I ultimately purchased this girl. Right. And so when you come over, if you want the fancy single steep teas, like the little oodly-doos, they're in here. And isn't she just so cute? I'm trying to decide, okay, this is her best angle for you. Maybe. So now I'm talking to my other purchase. He had multiple jars, and one of them was like highly decorative, like it was very thin, and it had like a slipware lattice configuration on it of yellow, and then there was like a bluebird on top, and she was gorgeous. But really what was tempting is there was another jar that was very much like this, like a lidded jar, and it had a fat whale and then like a fish and a bird, I think, like on top of each other on the handle. And so that was tempting. But the reason I was really tempted by it was the body of the vessel itself had this like really fat black slipware. Was it like the arms of the Kraken, or was it the waves? But it had this like beautiful big swirly, like really dynamic slip texture on it. And I was so tempted by that one. But it was a little bit more narrow, and I was kind of afraid of that like very tall lid, because I was like, I probably will break that in like 10 seconds. But it was very charming. And then he had another jar that was not lidded, so it was just an open jar, and it was a bit like fatter and like not more cylindrical, just like it didn't taper and didn't have a belly on it. a little bit of belly, like a little bit of shoulder, but it wasn't, it was more of like a jar, like a open, like a pickle jar or something. But it was similar height, but it had these, and it had that beautiful big fat slip design on it. But then the handles were just two whales, like black whales. I'm not sure I made the right decision, but I went with more functional. So I got this beautiful jar, and then I also purchased, there was a gourd. I think there are a couple that do it. I just talked to the gentleman, but they are Callaway Colonials gourd art. Y'all, I was not planning on buying a gourd. That was not even in my, that was not in my place that I was thinking. I wanted to buy all of the gourds. They were all gorgeous. But like, look at this texture. And like the speckliness of the black paint. And then this shape with the like amazing vine handle. And then they're all, if you can see it better here, they all have like a coated interior, so that if you did want to put a liquid in them, like he specifically was like, don't fill it all the way up. I was like, don't worry, I'd be afraid to break it. I live in fear. But you can, if you wanted to put liquid in it to like have flower arrangement or whatever. Maybe not a plant. Maybe a plant. I don't know. Whatever. I don't know things. You could ask them. But they're so gorgeous. And this shape. And I don't know what it is about this, right? It's to make it look like a pouring vessel, but just something about this just got me. It got me. They had one that was like maybe like three of these high, and it was also black, and it was also the picture shape, and it had this like it had a really strong vertical tree on it with like these horizontal branches with these black birds on it. Oh my gosh. I wanted it so bad. But it was a pretty big footprint, and I was just like, where can I put that in my house? And so part of me was like, well, that's why you're refinishing a basement. And part of me was like, stop filling up a room that you don't even have completed yet, that you're already filling up with like your work stuff. So settle down. But I did really want it. But I thought this one was slightly more reasonable, and like maybe it could sit on a shelf, and maybe it could even like hold my spinning yarn that I'm working on in the moment. I don't know, somehow it seemed a little slightly more realistic. But he also had these like ones that were just a half gourd, that were like fruit bowls or what have you. There was one that was like, it's like that Hubbard squash blue that I am enamored with, and it had this like creepy looking angel inscribed on the front of it. I really wanted that one. I am kind of sad I didn't buy a fruit bowl, but maybe next year. Just next year. I'm old enough, I can wait. But I mean, come on. And then upstairs there was a basket maker who had beautiful baskets that I was very tempted by. She had feather baskets, which I think I have heard of before, but had never maybe seen. Her name is Margaret Bickenhuser, and she is in Springfield, Ohio. She had these feather baskets, which she had one that was kind of like a cat head, like the bottom, like the four like kind of like knobs, and it had a really beautiful belly on it, and then again like a wood handle, and then the lid is woven into the handle so that it'll slide up and down. And wouldn't it be perfect for your spinning fiber? I mean, except that your spinning fiber would definitely get caught on the inside of the basket. But it was like reed. I mean, it was reed, right? That's what it was not like a primitive texture. It was pretty smooth. I think it would still be lovely. But that was very tempting. But she also had these amazing German paper stars. Right? And these, the white ones, she just dipped in beeswax. And so beeswax is another way to get me to buy stuff. And I was just so charmed by them. And so I definitely did come home and look up how to make more. And I definitely went to Michael's and got some paper. Because because I have beeswax and I'm always looking for a reason to use my beeswax. But aren't they super cool? So if you're interested in making them, you just on YouTube, you can just search German paper star and you'll find plenty of tutorials. And she had some that were colored that were a bit bigger. And instead of using beeswax, she just used paraffin to dip them, because the beeswax will kind of yellow, is kind of yellow. You can buy white beeswax too, but I don't know how it does like over time if it yellows. But I don't know. I was just something about them being dipped in wax. I was just like, yes, because they're like so hard and pokey. I think normally I'm afraid of paper or anything that's supposed to be like an ornament or anything that's gonna like be held over time. But these are great with the wax, and I would love to do them on winter foliage, like a pine or some sort of conifer bough in the front room of the house. I think it'd be so pretty. So I bought some like red and some crafty brown and some kind of white paper. The tutorial I saw used scrapbooking paper because specifically were 12 inches long. So you could definitely do them like if you just had copy paper, you could just cut it on the diagonal and get that longer strip, I imagine. But I went ahead and busted out the $3 purchase. Just crazy like that. So those are the things I purchased, and then I'll talk a little bit about just New Harmony itself. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about New Harmony, and the way I'm going to do that is basically just flip through my photo roll and narrate over top of it because it's just the easiest way for me to do that from a technological standpoint. This is the granary, so this is the place where part of the show was held, but I would also say it's kind of like the primary structure that the harmonists have still there. Their church was much larger than this, but it is gone. It's been disassembled. It was actually disassembled by them at a later date, so it's not there anymore, and I wish it was because it was amazing looking. They have a model of it in the visitor center, which I did not take a picture of, but one day. So anyways, I'm just going to basically read you the Wikipedia page for a moment, and then I'll talk about my photos. But just to kind of give you a grounding, it's the most succinct way to do that. Established by the Harmony Society in 1814 under the leadership of George Rapp, the town was originally known as Harmony. In its early years, the 20,000-acre settlement was the home of Lutherans who had separated from the official church in the Duchy of Württemberg and immigrated to the United States. The Harmonists built a new town in the wilderness, but in 1824 they decided to sell their property and return to Pennsylvania. So this is just an aside. They were only there for 10 years, and they built something like 120 buildings, many of which still stand. So it was kind of wild. They were wildin'. They were fully wildin'. But after they went back to Pennsylvania, Robert Owen, who was a Welsh industrialist and social reformer, purchased the town in 1825 with the intention of creating a new utopian community and renamed it New Harmony. The Owenite social experiment failed 2 years after it began. So it was troubled by, again, he was an industrialist. He had a lot of money. He had a lot of capital to invest in this process. But it was definitely plagued by interesting economic ideals that were not necessarily really ground up amongst the residents themselves. But New Harmony did change, so I'm back to the Wikipedia. New Harmony changed American education and scientific research. Town residents established the first public library, a civic drama club, and a public school system open to men and women. Its prominent citizens included Owen's sons, Robert Dale Owen, an Indiana congressman and social reformer who sponsored legislation to create the Smithsonian Institution, David Dale Owen, a noted state and federal geologist, William Owen, a New Harmony businessman, and Richard Owen, Indiana State geologist, Indiana University professor, and the first president of Purdue University. The town also served as the second headquarters of the U.S. Geological Survey. Numerous scientists and educators contributed to New Harmony's intellectual community, and then it gives a list of such. And that was kind of called, and I'm back to my interpretation, that was sort of the, they called it the afterglow. So even though the Owen experiment in the utopian colony only lasted 2 years, it did still have this draw for intellectuals and artists that lasted quite a bit longer. So again, you have the site of the longest running public library at the the Working Men's Institute, and it's just very interesting. But this is the original structure from the original harmonists, and you can see like there's some vertical slits along that bottom like rougher stone area, and those were defensible. So it was meant to be a place where they could retreat to and defend if necessary. That did not, from what I understand, that did not happen in the 10 years that they were there, but it was built to be defensible. And there's actually a cistern inside this building, so they would have had fresh water, and apparently like a place that's like a strong room where they could have kept valuables and what have you. So is the church itself is reminiscent, like the church, the model they have of the church is reminiscent of this structure. It almost kind of looks like four of these put together in a cross formation. It's really, anyway, it was very interesting, and I would love to have gotten more information about it, but I'll come back. And you'll see a lot of this like peg and post construction. So I just took a close-up of it. And then here's the inside the granary. So this is the second floor of how it is configured now, but there would have been at least two more floors in the original building. And you can kind of see that by the windows that are on the left there. For multiple layers of storing grain and hay. But you can still see the pegs. If you look along the cross braces, you can still see the pegs as they were. And then I just took a picture of how beautiful the day was, because it was like this perfect November, a little bit cool, but still, it's temperate. It was very mild. It was just very beautiful, sad lighting. It's gorgeous. And so then this is inside the dormitory. So for a while, I don't think for the entire length that the harmonists were there, they were celibate. They did have different dormitories for men and women. And so this, I believe, was the men's dormitory. This was the second location of the show itself, so we had access to this building. And at the top of this staircase, you can see that kind of textured roof. This is what it looks like up close. So this is their sort of building they used brick, which it's wild how much brick they would have had to fire. That church would have been, I can't imagine how much brick was involved in that church. It was enormous. Again, it was like at least four of those granaries. And again, all of the other buildings that they were building. But at the ceiling, you can see that they had this sort of, what they would do is it looks like wheat cereal, like shredded wheat cereal. What they do is take planks, like smaller planks, and they would wrap them in straw and mud to use as insulation. So that's what you're seeing between those like longer lumber cross braces, is sort of this like wood-rich wattle and daub kind of construction. And the reason that the wood is so roughly hewn is, well, it was hewn by hand, but it's actually roughed up more than that because they used it for the plaster to adhere to. And as somebody who's who needs to do plaster work in her bedroom, I feel you, harmonists. I feel you. I can't imagine the undertaking of building all of these buildings in 10 years. I can't easily find like how many folks were there for that initial 10-year period. But man, they must have just been working without end. Now, this is, excuse me, this is built in the 60s. There's this open air, the church with no roof, the church without roof, the roofless church. I think it's the roofless church. I apologize. And so it's not this wooden structure. This structure is just within like a courtyard that is itself the roofless church. But it's just this really cool structure that you can't help but take a picture of because, look at it. It's all wooden shingle, and it's really fun and just curvilinear fabulousness. It does have a sculpture inside that you can see there, but it is just pretty. It's pretty rad. And then on the way walking from there to the visitor center, the Athenaeum, there's the communal bread oven is still hanging out, has been recently rehomed. And so that is the Athenaeum. That is on the Wabash River, and it's built by a famous architect who I know nothing about, and has interesting aspects to it that I know nothing about. But it is something about moving through the landscape and highlighting that there's supposed to be like a walkway up from the Wabash, and like again, like you're entering through these spaces and moving through them. I hope to go back and visit and learn more about that. And it is definitely an unusual addition, but it's outside of the town. It's still all very easily walkable, but it's adjacent to the town itself. Oh, sorry, I keep giving you more information than you need. So back at the granary, just another picture of it, and then you can see here better those defensible slits. And I don't know, so this brickwork that's at the base of the building, I I don't think that's modern. I think that is original to the building, but I don't know what it's for. I don't know if it was originally like it almost looks like it had been troughs of some sort, like if it was some sort of water system. I don't know. I asked several people and could not find that information. So if you know, hey, chime in. Thanks. Would be very specific. And just another picture of the interior with a better camera lens to show how lovely and warm it is. And again, you can see the pegs, the peg construction throughout there, which is pretty fun. And then this building on the left is, I just wanted to climb this wall and take a picture of it for you because it's so cool. You can see the granaries there on the right, to the center right. Oh, sorry, I keep touching the camera like touching the screen like I'm pointing for you. But to the left is the laboratory. So this was the second, the new Harmonists, not the original. And you can tell it's much fancier, much more elaborate construction. And that's the reason I wanted pictures of it. I mean, look at this, the chimney stacks. There's 3 chimney stacks there. Is that even right? Because there's windows under there. Whatever. I don't know. I would love to know what that looks like inside. But I believe it is a personal residence. And it has a beautiful fish weather vane, which I was very envious of. But this was originally the laboratory. So this was kind of like the amongst the new Harmonists, this was sort of the center of science and discovery. And it's just really pretty and unfair that I couldn't go back there. And then this is just a picture along the street I parked on, just to show you just in general, like what most of the town itself looks like is more, I would say there's more lumber construction than brick, but there is still quite a lot of brick. And then I didn't take any pictures of the town itself, which also has really, like this town center, which also had lots of cute buildings. But yeah, I hope to go back and take you for a better tour the next time around. And so I talked a little bit about last time about how I've been really interested in looking up these different utopian societies, and I would say also separatist societies. Like there is some overlap, but not always. I mean, I guess a utopian society, but I mean, they're not separatist because like lots of them do allow new people in, but I guess it is a point of being allowed. Like you do have to receive like acceptance by the community. So I guess in that way we would have to say that they're separatists, I guess. But not all separatists are utopians, even though they're not classified as utopian societies, but I would say that most separatists are probably like, utopia is this like unattainable ideal, right? And so I would say that probably most people, if they're separating from the society at large, are trying to achieve something that is utopianist. I don't know. And like some of them are communal and some of them aren't. There's just all sorts of different flavors, and the Venn diagram gets a little bit crazy. But I'm just interested in all of those communities and like thought processes and economic systems, and it's just fascinating. So, and especially in this area, like Ohio and Indiana and Kentucky seem to be like a big, because a lot of these societies formed in like the early 1800s, so there was still really cheap land to be had in these areas at that time for them to like to parcel themselves off onto. So I found this book. So there were lots of folks, lots of you responded with different utopian societies or different separatist societies or just different interesting people in your area. So the Oneida colonies, Sugar Hill, Snow Hill, something like. Anyway, so there's lots of interesting ones, and I did find a book called Utopia Drive, and this book is by Eric Rees. It's subtitled A Road Trip Through America's Most Radical Idea. And it goes through, like, he starts in Pleasant Hill because he is from Kentucky. So he starts at the Shakers in Pleasant Hill. Oh my goodness. How can I not work my phone? He starts at the Shakers Shakers in Pleasant Hill. And then he goes from there up to New Harmony. He goes over to Twin Oaks. Brentwood is also, but I can't remember which one that is. He talks about the perfectionists. He talks about, and then he talks about like Thoreau and Emerson, and he does talk, I think, a little bit about Oneida. I'm not complete. I actually am done. I don't know why I'm saying I'm not done. I think maybe I just didn't listen as thoroughly to like the last 30% of the book. So I feel like I'm not done because I don't feel like I have like a lot of like closure on it. But it is definitely, I recommend it, especially if you get it on audiobook. It is definitely a survey. Like it's broad and shallow, but still fun. Like, and he talks a lot about like the oh, maybe Brentwood is the Cincinnati, the laborists people. That might be it. What I have found the most interesting and what I have been the most intrigued by is all of the economic systems that like went around these different colonies, these utopian colonies. Like, so these like super anti-capitalist like economic structures, which are fascinating. Like the first co-op in Cincinnati, I think it's supposed to be the first co-op in general in Cincinnati, worked on this labor model where they exchanged notes of labor instead of the actual dollar. Because the founder felt like you should always be able to make a fair and living wage, but that you should not be able to accumulate capital that is basically off of other people's labor, which is the system that we currently work in. And so people flip out at me when I like shake my fist at capitalism, because there is this like confusion, I think, about like capitalism versus a free market versus like there's a lot, there are nuances in everything, obviously, but capitalism, like the accruement of capital for the sake of it, and the fact that the capital earns like greater and greater power as it is, that is what these people are reacting against. They're obviously not reacting against people having their own industries or their own businesses, or again, having a living wage that they can be comfortable and be secure in. But they're so different than our current model. It's really fun to just learn about them, again, in this like early 19th century American context. So the harmonists, there was the original harmonists, then New Harmony came in. There are lasting benefits. Like it's the site of one of the first public schools in America because they had such an emphasis on learning and education. It is also the site of the longest operating public library in America, which is super fun. The New Men's Institute, which I unfortunately did not get to visit because it just didn't work out. But I'm looking forward to going back because they have a museum, and then you can visit the library, and so that's really intriguing that exists. And so there's all these interesting, because lots of these utopian societies are based on, not all of them, but many of them want to create greater gender equality. And so but it's interesting because there's usually not interest in changing the gender roles. Like women are still kept to like the traditional female activities, but they're just supposed to be greater value based on them so that there is greater equality. And, like we learned a lot, like we learned when I was a kid about like the Shakers, but it's like, oh, those Shakers, they were crazy. They were celibate. So of course they couldn't continue on. And it was like, but the reason that they were celibate was never really talked about. Like that, again, that part of the reason they were celibate is because like when you have families that break off from the community, they become insular and they become less a part of the community because they have their own smaller community that they're operating at home. And so one of the reasons that the Shakers and other colonies or intentional communities, how's that? One of other intentional communities have required celibacy was because they didn't want that separation of people from the larger community. They wanted to keep the community more intact. And one way to do that was to prevent people from breaking off and becoming smaller family units. Now, of course, there are also other religious things, and like that's an additional thing or a different thing. They didn't always exist together, those ideas. Or like the community, there's a community in Zoar, Ohio, Zoar, which is not in this book, but they became celibate for a while. They're German separatists. They became celibate for a while just as population control. Like they weren't and actually they weren't intending to be a communal community. Like they literally just had to start sharing stuff because they couldn't all make it individually. So they became like a commune. They lived communally, they shared land, like nobody had private property, primarily just because like that was how they had to like go forward. They needed everybody to share. And so again, they became celibate for a while just because they needed like birth control. They needed, the population was growing too fast. And again, they're another one where children only stayed with their like birth family for a certain amount of time and then went off and either I think the children all lived like more like together, like in a different building or what have you. Again, they're still part of the community, but they weren't specifically with their birth family. And that makes sense because at that time, like we're talking about like a time where like apprenticeships and stuff were more common, where people would like literally send their kids away to learn a trade or what have you, which, you know, as a person with a teenager, I'm like, seems astute, but it's, so anyways, I'm sorry. So back to the book itself. I do recommend it. He definitely, like, he has his own opinions about economic systems and about capitalism and about like the state of the country and like all of that stuff. Like he definitely has his own voice, but it's pretty clear when he is speaking his voice versus when he is speaking of history or a fact. He does not blur those lines. Obviously, what he chooses to present is going to be skewed because of his perspective, like everyone's. But it's definitely a good touching point, I think, to start and like learn more about these different communities, because sometimes it's just hard to even find out like where to begin looking. And it's really interesting, his talk about, or his visit to Twin Oaks was also really cool. And that's like a current living intentional community. There's 2 or more, I think just 2. But like they're the folks who do Southern Exposure Seed Exchange. And so like to talk to actually people in a living community that is, again, is it utopian? I don't know that that's their intention, but they're clearly trying to do something different. And they have ideals of why they're doing that. And so that's though when the book sorts of break down for me, like as after that section. Like after that he starts talking more about Thoreau and like, I don't know, like not that but like that's, I think for me that became like, it became I don't know, it lost the focus for me, and so I became less interested in it. Not because I'm not interested, I mean it was still interesting information, it just wasn't what I was looking for in that place, I guess. But I enjoyed it. See if your library has it. It's a good read. Okay, so then the second book I've been reading that I want to talk about a little bit is The Knowledge Gap, The Hidden Cause of America's Broken Educational System and How to Fix It. And that is by Natalie Wexler. So this is a book that I started listening to through my library, and I ultimately bought the hard copy just because I was invested. So it might be a little bit of confirmation bias. There might have been a little bit of like, I thought that's what was going on. And so I am aware that I agree with her, and therefore I agree with her, and therefore I'm more likely to be slightly less critical of her thought processes. But basically, her premise is that in the United States, we have moved towards a skills-based approach to reading comprehension. So that's the main topic of the book is reading comprehension and how we teach that in the United States. And that she talks about why we have somehow gotten to the place where that's what we're doing, is this skills. And what that means is that teachers are teaching like these sort of like meta approaches to reading, and sort of like schema for readers to understand a text. But the problem is that those things are super helpful, right? Like those things have been shown to be helpful on like via testing. Those things have been shown, like if a student knows how to find a main idea, or if a student knows how to figure out a sequence of events, those things are helpful on reading comprehension tests. And that's, I mean, they're mostly talking about tests because like that's an easy way to assess. But that we have, and so those things do help readers. Basically, they kind of make you more aware that you're reading, right? Like, oh, okay, I'm not just moving, like I'm just not like swimming through this text. I'm more aware of the water that I'm swimming through. And that those things are helpful, like, right? Like we should know those things, but that they're helpful let's just say they're helpful if you dedicate 10% of reading education to those things, of comprehension education to those things. They're quite helpful. But what we have done is we're now dedicating like 100% of our reading instruction to those things. And in fact, what we're usually doing is giving kids texts. Sorry, my grocery delivery is coming. We're usually giving kids texts that are really disconnected from each other. Like they're disconnected necessarily from what they're doing like in their day. And again, every school is different. I know that there's going to be a teacher out there who was like, that is not what I do. And I completely understand. This is just a general statement. And I would say from our experience with our system, it's matching up with that. But we're giving them these like disconnected texts. Like we might give them a text about Inuit peoples and like how the Inuit people's diet has changed over time. And her theory is that, well, yes, like kids can still read that, but it is much more challenging for them to understand it or to take away what the author is telling them if they don't know what the Inuit people is, or who the Inuit people are, or what the Arctic Circle is, or what that means. Like, what is the climate in the Arctic Circle? Or, so the theory, like, is I think that like, well, I mean, yeah, like you could read a book in Russian by looking up every word, but A, that sounds awful. And B, even if you were like super committed and industrious, like it would also be just super challenging because like every word has different nuances and different contexts and has multiple meanings. And so like without having some sort of foundational knowledge to work from, we are really disservicing learners, especially learners who don't have other resources at home. So if a student has lots of books at home, if a student has a family that's really invested in like field trips to like historical places, or just has a family that's like interested in different topics and exposing them to those, or it has time or money to do those things. But if a student is in a home where maybe English isn't the first language, where maybe there are other stressors going on, where maybe mom works multiple jobs and isn't home all the time to do those things, those students are really lacking exposure to the knowledge that would actually help them become better readers. And also I would say, like, one of the things that she points out is that one of the teachers she interviews at a later time who does this knowledge-based approach. So moving away from these abstract concepts to actually going to like teaching, like what was, like Mesopotamia, like what was that about? Teach, like, what was the Civil War? When did that happen? What was going on? What are all the different things about it? Rather than like having the kids read a specific passage about the Gettysburg Address without the context of any of those other, without the context of like where that passage comes from. And one of the things that was really, I felt like was really moving and sad and hopeful all at the same time is that she's talking about, she's a second grade teacher, and she's talking about how she has never seen classroom learning spill over into recess. So she's like, yeah, we did the section about geology, and all the kids were out on the playground like looking at rocks and trying to figure out what the different rocks were. We did a section on Greek myth, and all the kids were like creating their own like groups of gods, like, oh, we need an Aphrodite, or we need a Athena, but we already have a Zeus, so if you want to be Zeus, you need to go play with that group. Or, so they were like taking that onto the playground. So they're building the comprehension that we're trying to teach them in this abstract way. They're building that comprehension by actually interacting with the knowledge, like interacting with what they're reading, not only amongst themselves, but then I think about like, then they go home, right? And like, what did you do at school today is, well, I learned that how to find the order of events in a text. And Mom's like, okay. Or what did you learn today? Oh, we learned about igneous rocks, and then we learned about sedimentary rocks, and then like, so then like that gives the kids like more chance. So like not only do they get to have better communication with the adults in their lives, also the kids in your lives, but like then they get to like show that they know something, and then that creates like such a pride, I think, in them, and we're denying them that by like not letting them, like, I don't know. Yes, I think if you're interested in education, or if like you're just interested in living in a country that has informed citizens. And like, there are definitely problems with this book. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not like 100% and I'm not all in. Certainly part of the problem with the knowledge-based approach is that we have to like agree on what knowledge we want to teach kids, which is pretty challenging. A lot of the countries that have a unified curriculum are smaller countries who have a little bit less diversity. And so like, yeah, that's a challenge, especially in our currently fractured times, especially in a country where we don't let the federal system dictate, which I have another with that, but like, let's not even, we leave, like choices like that up to the states, who often leave it up to the districts, who often leave it up to the teachers. And so like, that's a challenge to try to somehow, to get everybody on the same page. That's a pretty big challenge. It's not flashy, and it's not new, and it's not easy to sell, which is what we like in this country. We really like that. So yeah, making those decisions and figuring out how to do that is work, but I think it's valid work, and I don't think that it it talks a little bit about how we tried to have a national history curriculum during the Clinton era, and how horribly that went wrong, and how it was so politically motivated, and that's really frustrating to read and to understand how that could be, certainly would be in this time. But I do think that there's certainly room for saying like, hey, this is something that all of the citizens of this country should probably know, just to kind of give them a common ground with which to communicate. And like, there can be room in that for additional information, like for additional learning. Like, clearly, if your school is made up of a lot of Ethiopian immigrants, like, you need to have room in that knowledge to accommodate students and to like get them engaged. And so I'm not saying that like teachers should all be reading from a telemarketing script every day. I don't think anybody wants that. But at the same time, we shouldn't be asking teachers to reinvent the wheel every day. Like, one of the reasons I didn't continue teaching was that like, I was a new teacher and I had 4 preps, and I was supposed to do everything as project-based learning, which means like you're somehow which we have squarely shown actually doesn't work for the learners that I was teaching. Like, it does not work for students who have lots of gaps in their knowledge or understanding of the subject matter. And so, but like, again, like that was the fad of the moment, was that like, oh, everything should be project-based learning. And well, if you can't do that, then that's your fault. It's not this idea, like this concept, this project-based learning. It's perfect and immaculate. And whatever problem you're having with it is your problem, which is not the way to keep teachers. Which is not the way to like have, to maintain people who want to help but don't know how, or, don't have somehow a magical 300-hour work week that they can work within. So the other part of this book that was quite painful is that she follows teachers from a skills-based teachers who are teaching in a skills-based format, and then a teacher who's teaching in this knowledge-based format. And it's really painful. And it's almost like the contrast between the two is so painful. Like the skills-based classroom is so horribly painful to listen to that it almost feels like it's made up. I don't think it was. And I think it would have been alleviated if she were able to follow multiple teachers. But again, that's a pretty big scope for one book, who is also trying to discover, like, to talk about this other thing. But it's bad. Like, it's just like, it just makes you want to like curl up. But at the same time, like, it is really great that when we do talk about this knowledge base, and again, take everything with a grain of salt. One teacher, I'm sure, is more experienced than the other. The students aren't the same, etc., etc., etc. But like, I do feel like there's clear potential in like teaching kids things that they can be interested in, and it doesn't have to be like what happened in 1876. What are the exact, like, what is the chronology of the rulers of England? Like, I don't think anybody is really advocating like that harsh of a like fact knowledge. Like, but the reality is math is a lot easier to do if you have memorized your times tables. And in fact, trying to redo your times, like trying to redo 6 times 8, yes, you should know how to do it. But trying to do it every time you need to know 6 times 8 is a lot more laborious, and I feel like makes learning a lot more of a challenge than just if you just went through the little bit of a discomfort of learning 6 times 8. It's just a little bit of discomfort. It's okay. And again, like, I love the concept of like having learner-focused learning, like to have child-centered learning where the teacher is a facilitator and not like the person in the pulpit. But if children don't even know what there is to learn, then how will they be able to choose what to learn? Like, that's a pretty big deal. Like, if they don't know that they might be really jazzed about the Crimean War, then they're not going to know that they're going to be jazzed about it. But like, just to have like this exposure, this survey of a lot of different things that then they can like delve into, is pretty, I don't know, that seems logical. It doesn't mean that we're not teaching them to learn whatever they want to. We're not teaching them the skills and the tools to like learn more. But the reality is like, yes, everything is Googleable. But if you don't know that Andrew Jackson and Martin Luther King were not contemporaries, you have to reinvent I keep saying reinvent the wheel, but like you have to keep doing everything the ground up every time, and that's a challenge. Like, that doesn't make learning interesting or exciting. So anyway, that was probably more of my 2 cents than you were in for. But this all said and done, I do highly recommend it. I do think she is I think she is kind to teachers. I don't think she is blaming anybody in particular. She does talk about like how we've had this like I just feel like it's so weird that we have so little demand for results. Like we have so little demand for results of a system before we just implement it. Like the small, like the like as if a philanthropist has a bunch of money and they want to throw some money at something and they just think it sounds like a great idea, then we're like, okay, sure, project-based learning. And then it's like, oh, except all those kids that we tried to push through that and all those teachers that we tried to push through that. And then maybe some of those teachers that we lost because of it, and maybe some of those students we lost because of it, are like then highly disserviced because of it. And she does talk very briefly about part of like our teachers in the United States don't actually like they only learn like they don't have as much like they're never taught like what they're going to teach. Are very rarely taught what they're going to teach. Like they're taught theory, they're taught all of this sort of like more academic stuff, and that really is largely because like educational school, like so teachers schools were kind of looked down upon in academia. And so like one of the ways that we can make our subjects sound more academic is to make it falsely academic, to like instead of making it making it, we're trying to make it academic when it could be vocational, essentially. Like we're trying to because we just want it to have more value in like the academic world, which drives me bananas. Like anytime anything is like falsely over vocabularied or made intentionally obtuse in the effort to literally make it more academic makes me bananas. And so like why don't we just all agree that we have respect for teachers and like we have a really like a deep respect for what they're doing and like let them like learn how to do it, whether that involves theoretical text or like actual hands-on stuff. Like that's ridiculous. Like I would really like a nurse, a healthcare provider, a doctor who knows how to like doctor me. Like who knows the nitty-gritty of how a body works and like actually like no, like versus like they only know the theoretical things. Like why would I want that? So why would I want that for my teacher? Anyway, sorry. Again, I'll cut myself off. Very interesting. Highly recommend it. I'm also reading Prairie Fires, which is about Laura Ingalls Wilder, which I highly recommend. I'm actually listening to it for the second time. Because I don't know, it just felt like the right thing to do. I'm also reading a bunch of like silly rom-com stuff. Let's just discuss. This one was recommended to me by a friend who is a very astute reader of things. She recommended Second First Impressions by Sally Thorne, which is about a woman who works in a retirement community and also operates a tortoise rehab / environment. It's really lovely. It is a nice break from me shaking my head at the sky when I read about like foolish things that we're doing in our educational system for no apparently good reason. I don't know why. So anyway, that's probably enough of me talking. I will see you in a few weeks. I hope you're enjoying Cozy Times. And yeah,